Time is constantly unfolding. Will we create and evolve? We must innovate now so we can leave the world better than we found it.
Check it out.
I am your host, Sohrab Mirmont, and welcome to Avant Savant. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode with our distinguished guest, Daniel Harmon. As one of the co-founders and the chief creative officer of the Harmon Brothers ad agency, he is responsible for launching multiple companies into the mainstream marketplace like Purple, Squatty Potty, and Poopery. And now they're creating original content. And Daniel is at the helm of their next show, The Tuttle Twins, based on the highly successful children's book, which has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Please welcome Daniel Harmon.
I grew up in Burley, Idaho, worked on a potato farm of a family friend. Every day I'd get up at, 5 a.m. to go move irrigation pipes, just the watering systems for the potatoes or the wheat or whatever we had. I would say to myself as I was moving one piece of 40-foot aluminum pipe, I'm going to college, I'm going to college, I'm going to college. It's like, I do not want to experience this my whole life. I didn't want to be a farmer. It's funny because I look back on that very fondly now. There's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of things I really appreciate about my farming background. But later on in my high school years, we started a potato selling business where we would take 50-pound boxes of potatoes from either my uncle's farm or a family friend's farm, or just buy them from the local potato packing plant. And we'd bring them down to Utah and sell them door to door to big families. We had no permits. There was nothing legal about what we were doing, I'm sure, but we also had cops stop and buy from us and didn't give us any problems. So we figured we were okay. But our sale of potatoes door to door was very straightforward. I didn't know anything about a sales pitch. All I knew was I told them I'd brought a load of fresh Idaho potatoes from my uncle's farm in Idaho, and I was selling them to earn money for mission for my church or for college. It was all kind of a little bit of a sob story type of thing. They would either be people that ate potatoes and they wanted to buy from me and support my cause, or they're just like, no. And that was about it. And I didn't know how to overcome any objections or how to build the value of the potatoes beyond that. I mean, it was just a very straightforward thing, but it turned out to be very successful. My brothers and I did this for a time and realized we were making more than what we would be making in a minimum wage job, which is about all that we would get at that point, and at that skill set and that point of life. That job led to another job in college where I sold alarm systems door to door. It was ADT alarm systems. That is where I learned a little bit about sales technique, about sales structure, about overcoming objections, about the clarity of your message, about getting people's attention and leading them in and building up value and how to close and those type of things. Those skills came later. So the potato sales had helped a lot because I'd gotten used to being on the doors and that type of thing. But then learned a lot more actual sales experience in that summer sales job, and was my brother and I were some of the top reps in the company that we were part of. And then later on, now that we're doing video advertising all the time with Harmon Brothers as an agency, that sales experience very much lends itself and has provided a lot of the backbone for the way that we approach video, the way that we approach messaging, where we feel like a lot of the stuff we do here at Harmon Brothers is all based on the clarity of being able to sell something to somebody, being able to relate with a person in the same way you would face to face, except it's all just through video, or being able to build value, overcome objections. All those principles still apply. We're just doing it now on social media and in a video format.
So when you were doing that line of work, did you have interest in video?
I would say there were two things that really influenced my interest in film and in advertising. And a big one of them was Monday Night Football. In my family growing up, I'm a Latter-day Saint. Not everybody that is, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints lives this way, so I'm not putting anybody to that standard. But within my family culture, we did not watch football on Sundays. I loved the NFL, but I didn't watch it. So Monday Night Football was a big deal to me. It was huge. I would make sure and tune in every Monday night when the football game was on. And my mom had this habit of trying to get us to do work during the commercial breaks, and it drove me crazy because she would be like, okay, it's a commercial break, everybody run around and pick up 20 things or do that kind of a thing. Because I mean, 9 kids, come from a family of 9 kids. The house was always not quite in quite as much order as I'm sure she would have liked to have been. And so it was a moment to be like, okay, let's scramble, let's get a few things done, and we'll come back and watch the football game. And I hated that because then I'd miss things like the Bud Light ads and some of the classic car advertising and things like that you saw back then. And I just loved watching commercials, and I memorized them, I quoted them, and did all that kind of thing. And then later on, I remember a time when my cousins were over playing at my house, and one of my brothers, I think it was my older brother, Neil, he grabbed me and he said, close your eyes and don't open them until I tell you. I'm like, okay. And he's like, and he leads me into the kitchen and he's like, listen and tell me what this reminds you of. Like, okay. He's like, just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And so I listen, and then I hear this clank, clank, which is a jar with a spoon in it. And the first thing that comes to my mind, I'm like, Miracle Whip. Or I said the Miracle Whip ad. And he's like, I told you he'd get it. And then they're like, no way. It was my cousins. They had this bet going on or something that I was going to be able to recognize this. The Miracle Whip had this ad campaign back in the day that was like, nothing beats I think it was the tangy zip of Miracle Whip. And they did a clink, clink with the jar. It's like an empty jar with a spoon in it. And they did that signature sound at the end to make you remember things. And so that's all they did. I had no context of what the game was they were playing. He just said, come in here, listen to this, tell me what it reminds you of. And I was able to get that. So that was a weird thing for me. I always loved commercials. I loved how they made me laugh. I loved the storytelling format of it. And I loved, those little iconic things that made them really stick in your mind, kind of like that little jar clink with the spoon in it. And then later on, Pixar released the first Toy Story film. And it was a tradition of my family to go and watch a movie on Thanksgiving or on Christmas Day. On both those holidays, we'd usually go to a movie, either as a family or I'd go off with my friends and go to a movie of some kind. And I remember watching Toy Story in the theater and just like my mind being blown by the animation in it and the storytelling. And I was like, man, this is so incredible. And so between what Pixar was doing, I mean, and I was really big into Star Wars and all those things back in the day, just like any kid. I loved Star Wars. I loved Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible, all those kinds of movies. It was later in college that I started being like, oh, I could go into film. And BYU had an animation program. I was going to school at BYU here in Utah. And the animation program was kind of in its infancy. Right now, it's like one of the top animation programs in the whole, I guess, in the world, where it's one of the main places that Pixar and DreamWorks and stuff recruit from. And it was kind of getting its start a little bit along. I think it'd been about 5 years into it or something along those lines. And I applied for that program. It was already exclusive where, they accepted only like 20 applicants a year or something like that. I didn't end up getting in. I guess it was on the cusp of it because they asked me to reapply because I was enough in that almost made it kind of ground that I applied once again, put together a portfolio, my animations and things. And once again, didn't get in. And I was kind of devastated. And then my mom called me up one day and said, BYU has an advertising program. I was like, an advertising? It's like, that's a thing. Like, that's a career. You can actually have a job at making ads. I just always thought it was the company that did it. Oh, that was Miracle Whip. That was Bud Light. That was, Ford. That was whoever that was making those ads. I didn't know that like there was such thing as ad agencies, and that was a professional service that was offered to people. And then I went and applied to BYU's creative advertising program. I got into that, and then that's kind of how I ended up inside the industry. It ended up being something where it kind of mixed together a lot of my storytelling roots and fun kind of creative thinking and the way I would memorize and ingest media with something that was a little bit more accessible and practical for me at the time to be able to make a living, for my family.
So when you graduated, your first commercial that you were a part of, was that a success right out of the gates, or how was that process?
Upon graduation, so I went out and worked in Chicago for a time. I did an internship out there, and my first job was in Chicago. And I worked for these bigger agencies that had accounts like McDonald's and Dell and the Chicago International Film Festival and Harley Davidson and General Electric and some of these really big accounts that I had the pleasure of working on. But a lot of the process in making ads in a traditional agency is that you come up with all sorts of ideas and pitch them and stuff, and not a lot of them get through, depending on what's going on. You might have several different teams of an art director and a copywriter that are paired together that are pitching to a creative director. There might be 5 different teams pitching to one creative director, and they'll select only one of those ideas, and then everybody else is just kind of off onto the next project, whereas that team of the copywriter and art director will go on and make their thing happen if it gets selected by the creative director. And so early on, a lot of my stuff wasn't chosen. It wasn't at all. In fact, it was more in my first job. I ended up being a writer at a design agency called VSA Partners, and that's when it was a little bit more kind of, we need this little sales copy written for this website here, or we need this thing written for a billboard or an ad, or we need these different materials written for this burger restaurant or whatever it was. That was the kind of stuff I was on. It was good experience, and it wasn't anything that you would see on like any kind of a national or international level for the most part. There was little bits and pieces that might have been, but I wouldn't say I had any kind of breakthroughs in those first jobs. It was more in working with my brothers on the side, where I started consulting and working with Orabrush. They co-founded the company Orabrush, and they were hiring me to moonlight for them. At night, I would just do different. I would write different copy for the things that they were working for. I would design different things. I actually designed the Orabrush logo, and that's where my stuff, I guess, started to get seen a little bit more, was through Orabrush.
How did that transition into you guys creating a company?
With the success of the Orabrush campaign, specifically that we created the first campaign, and I say I was involved at some level in consulting on it, but my brothers created the first campaign that was a success for advertising on YouTube with a trackable return on investment. So meaning they'd put the video out there. YouTube had just launched its platform for selling ads on there. But prior to that, it was just a free-for-all with the videos, right? There was no advertising on it. But as soon as they launched their ad platform, my brothers started experimenting with it, of buying ads for the Orabrush on there with the video ad that we'd created. And that ad, when we spent $1, we could predictably get, $2 back, kind of a thing. And that was the first time that had ever been done on YouTube. And it started getting millions of views. It got attention of national retailers. We ended up getting distribution in CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and distribution all over the world from the success of that campaign. That was then seen by Susie Batiste, who is the owner of Poopery, and she reached out to my brother Jeffrey and said, "I want that done for my brand." And so we saw where Orabrush was going, and we kind of felt like it needed to go a different direction than it was, and so it was just kind of time for us to leave there. And so we ended up resigning from Orabrush to do the Poopery campaign. And when we were going to do the campaign, we needed a business entity to put that into, and it was kind of last minute, middle of the night kind of decision of like, well, we got to create an LLC for this thing. What are we going to call it? And let's just call it Harmon Brothers, and we'll change it later if we need to. That was kind of the thinking behind it. And in fact, at that point, my brother Jeffrey had been kind of the face of Orabrush from a marketing standpoint for a long time. And although he wanted to kind of distribute that credit across the team a little bit more. And that was, he said, a little bit of his intention in having Harmon Brothers as the name is that like it would more accurately kind of distribute the credit across the brothers team that we were making that happen, sort of thing. And anyway, we did the Poopery campaign. It got picked up by Huffington Post and Adweek and Advertising Age and all these major publications all over the place, and they were citing creative agency Harmon Brothers. And we were all around my brother's kitchen table when we were launching this thing. And we were looking at each other like, are we an agency? I guess we're an agency. I mean, we technically did a campaign for hire for a company. I guess that makes us an agency. And the name kind of stuck from there once Poopery blew up. And we didn't lean into becoming an agency for a while. We were kind of reluctant about it because at the same time, we were actually starting another business called VidAngel. And so we figured if we were doing two companies at once, one of them had to fail and we needed a fallback plan. And so we had these two companies going at once, VidAngel and Harmon Brothers, and they kind of both took off at the same time. And then our other co-founder, Benton Crane, he and I ended up running Harmon Brothers, and Neil and Jeffrey ended up running VidAngel, and that's kind of where that all started. But Harmon Brothers had some really hard times after Poopery. Like after that initial success, it took us a while to kind of stumble onto a model that we felt like worked for us, and that was with Squatty Potty. That kind of finally took off when Bobby, who was a founder of Squatty Potty and the CEO, when he saw Poopery, he was like, "Oh, I wanted that to be my brand." He was like mad that when he saw Poopery, he was like, "Oh, that should have been my brand." That he came to us to do something special for him, and we did the unicorn campaign, and things kind of took off from there.
That's amazing. So when you say there was a little bit of a struggle between those two campaigns, did you do a series of other campaigns that just weren't as?
Yes, we did a whole bunch of different things for other clients that we did for little to no profit. And just because we were trying to put food on the table, we were trying to figure out our model, we were trying to find something that actually worked, and stuff that you would have never even heard of. And part of what we learned during that process was that we were a really good scaling company, not a great nailing company. And what I mean by that is when someone came to us for a campaign, they would often have a struggling business, and they would look at our marketing efforts as a silver bullet that we're just going to fix whatever wrongs they had going on in their business. And if they hadn't nailed their business down, it didn't matter how great the marketing was. If their funnel wasn't flowing well to capture customers, or if their product wasn't solving the problem it really needed to in the way it needed to for the client, if there were too many other friction points, then all that kind of gas poured onto the fire wasn't any good. There was like no fire to begin with to even pour gas onto, and that's kind of what we discovered is with something like Poopery, there was already distribution. There was already thousands of customers that were raving about it. It was working so well. It was just, and then the marketing just kind of blew that up, right? A similar thing with Squatty Potty. It already worked really well. It already had the success on Shark Tank. There's a lot of things that were already working for it, and then the marketing really just kind of put it on a rocket pack, and sent it upward. It was ready for that kind of launch. But the companies that came to us between Poopery and Squatty Potty, a lot of them just hadn't been nailed down. They hadn't figured things out for their customer quite yet. They needed to pivot and do different things And some of our marketing efforts often exposed where they were weak and helped them with that. And it was nice to do that. But at the same time, they weren't successful campaigns because they were just too early stage. They needed to work through some more stuff before they got to that point. And so that's a lot of what we learned about ourselves is the type of client that it made sense for us to partner with.
I see. So your formula was always the same as far as scripting goes and like the problem solution. That always stayed the same. The issue was the companies that you were.
Yeah, it wasn't just the company. It was also the model, the way we package things together for the client. In the past, we would charge this much to do this little thing and this much to do this extra thing and then this to this, rather than just being like, here, if you want a campaign, here's one lump sum. Just make the decision. We'll take care of everything for you. And then from there, you don't really have to worry about it. And when we did it on kind of an itemized sort of billing for it, it just added so much friction and confusion, and we had to resell them over and over again on things rather than just making one decision and then them just trusting us to run with it, you know? And so that was part of what we had to figure out in our model was how to package things up in a way that worked for the client to where they could understand, oh, if I do this, then I'm going to get this video campaign. They're going to do this for my website, and they're going to run these ads behind it, as opposed to dividing everything up in such a way where they're just like having to make decision after decision and thinking of the nickel and dime process through that got in our way a lot. So it really taught us a lot about how to package things up for the client in a way that made sense and where they could just feel like, oh, I can just make this decision, and this is our campaign that we're leaning forward with the Harmon Brothers, and that's what we're doing.
You have gone from being a commercial advertising creative director to going into the narrative field, which
Yes.
we talked about this a little while ago, and there's tons of directors like Ridley Scott who started in the commercial business and now is doing features. You've embarked now on an animated series called the Tuttle Twins. What inspired that? Is it the timing of what's going on around the world right now? I know you've got kids, but I just want to know what made you decide to go from advertising into the Tuttle Twins.
So this is something that we learned about ourselves early on at Harmon Brothers, is that there was a tremendous amount of passion for storytelling within our organization. Our why is share better stories. One format for doing that is advertising. Share better stories to us means stories that make the world a better place, stories that are better than what our competitors are doing, stories that are better than what our clients that we partner with could do for themselves, and continually improving on stories, doing it better than we've done in the past. That has a lot of meaning for us. And we've always known within our organization, myself included, that there was a lot of us that wanted to tell our own stories, not just stuff for hire for clients. And so this has been in the works a long time of how we were eventually going to make a jump into original content. Some of that stems back to VidAngel. I'm a co-founder of VidAngel, like I mentioned before. And when VidAngel went to raise money to help them fight the lawsuit that they ended up in with Disney, VidAngel raised over $10 million. And I can't remember if I called or emailed my brother, but I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm like, why couldn't we just turn and raise investment money from the crowd the way we have for VidAngel and do it for individual projects, like for a movie or for a TV show? And my brothers took that and ran with it. And eventually ended up doing that model with a show called The Chosen, which is the first multi-season about the life of Jesus. And it's been tremendously successful in that they raised, I think it was over $11 million. It's the top crowdfunded media project of all time. You know, they passed things like Veronica Mars with Kristen Bell and stuff. They're sitting at the very top of that, and it was a very successful thing for them, where they were able to create a whole season of a show. And The Chosen now has like 71 million views. It's been very successful worldwide. And I just didn't know out of that was going to come my turn with it, coming back around at some point. And I have a friend, Connor Boyack, who wrote a set of books called The Tuttle Twins. And we worked on a project back in the day, a documentary, a little documentary side project I did back in the day called Life on Bitcoin. It was about a married couple that goes and lives on Bitcoin for, I think it's 100 days straight. It might go down in history as one of the most expensive film projects of all time because of all the Bitcoin that was spent back in the day for it. Now Bitcoin's, worth, I don't know, as of this airing, maybe $22,000 or something crazy like that. But we'd worked on that project with Connor, and he'd been a friend for a while, and I'd followed his work, and he runs a think tank here in Utah that advocates for liberty. Specifically, like he's gotten laws passed that help with things like people being able to use CBD oil, where in the past that was outlawed in Utah, or things like body cameras on police officers for more transparency, that kind of stuff. That's something that helps both the police officer and it helps the person in question that they're dealing with, right? So just some common sense laws like that. He even got a law passed that makes it legal for kids to have a lemonade stand without having to have some sort of a permit. If you can think of how crazy some of our laws are. Anyway, he wrote this book series called the Tuttle Twins for his kids. Essentially, he went to look for resources on how to teach kids about principles of economics, human rights, freedom, things like that, that he felt like were really deficient out there, and he didn't find anything on Amazon. And so he basically went and created it himself into this book series, and he sold over 1.5 million of these books now. It's just gone crazy with the demand that's out there for it. And so Benton, the CEO of Harmon Brothers, and myself approached him well over a year ago. I think it was over 2 years ago, and said, "Hey, we want to make this into an animated series." He had mentioned that he wanted to make it into an animated series before that, but hadn't really been able to get any traction with it. And we approached him and said, "Hey, we want to be the ones to do this." And because I was an early customer of the books, I'm a big believer in the principles of freedom. I think free markets have done more to lift the world out of poverty than any other thing that's ever been tried in the history of humanity. And I feel like the preservation of human rights, of our rights as not just American citizens, but just human rights in general, free speech, these types of things I think are so important. And I want to teach my kids about them. I feel like that's not happening as much in either in our culture or within our education systems. So anyway, approached him. He loved our work at Harmon Brothers. We've loved his work for a while. And we were able to put a deal together for us to make it into an animated series. And then here, over a year later than that coming together, I shouldn't say, well, much over a year after we first approached him, the pandemic hits. All the government overreach that's happening that goes along with that hits. All the suppression of free speech that we're seeing within social media and stuff hits. The printing of money going wild and crazy. I mean, that's been going on for a long time, but really accelerating. So many of these things hit, and it's more like a perfect storm kind of scenario than it is anything to do with jumping and trying to ride a wave of anything that's going on. Because we've been working at this, like I said, I think now for over 2 years towards this, and it just so happens that it's hitting in a time when the need is very, very pronounced, where people really are craving to be able to teach their kids something above and beyond what they're going to learn in a public school setting, or besides what they're learning in culture about, the principles that have made the United States survive as long as it has, that have made it as great as it has, and ultimately that can be applied not only to this country but any country. right?
So many people try to do crowdfunding projects and kind of fail. They miss the mark. You guys have been able to do it successfully just over and over and over. Is it because your stuff is so true to, people's hearts and is relevant? I mean, is that a big part of the success?
Yeah, I think it is probably the biggest part of the success is that we tend to gravitate towards things that are disruptive and that resonate with an underserved audience in some way. So in the case of The Chosen, they were able to raise that much money because Hollywood wasn't going to make a series like that. And even if they did, they probably wouldn't make it quite right, And so going in and be like, hey, we're going to make a multi-season TV show about Jesus. And it's like, oh, make it, how are you going to make a series interesting about a character that's inherently perfect? Like that's the definition of good storytelling is to show a progression with somebody, right? It's to show a transformation. And like, it's like this man that's, quote unquote perfect. Like how does that even work out? Right. That's like a hard pitch for Hollywood. And so it was very much serving an underserved audience there. And in the same way, I think Tuttle Twins has had the success that it has, where we were able to raise $1,070,000 in under a month, is which funds our first 4 episodes, is again because I think a third of our investors said, I don't even care if I get a dime back. I just want this to exist. And that's why they were investing, is they were very much in it for the cause of it, and that they wanted to see something like that exist in society. They wanted to see those principles carried forward in some way for their kids and invest in the next generation. And I think for me personally, I believe there's a big disconnect between the number of people who like freedom and who actually understand freedom. What I mean by that is I think everyone likes their freedoms, right? They have their own freedoms that they like. Like no one likes to be told what to do by anybody. If they can get away with it, they'd much prefer to govern themselves, right? To be able to make decisions for themselves, to have the liberty to move about, as long as it's not taking freedoms away from other people, right? People want to be able to do that. So I think everyone loves their freedoms, but not everyone knows what real freedom actually looks like. And I think that's so much of what these books are doing for people, is really helping them understand, oh, this is what a free market actually is. This is what it really means when you preserve human rights in this way. Like that's very different when you break it down in a way that kids can understand. And what we're trying to do with the show is kind of combine, I'd say, the vision of something like the Magic School Bus with the comedy of things like Phineas and Ferb and The Simpsons in a really family-friendly way, so that kids can understand it, but adults will enjoy hanging out for the ride as well, and they'll maybe even learn something as they go along. And I think that's kind of been our sweet spot with it.
How much does comedy play into the success of the videos, either the commercials that you guys make or any of the projects?
One of the things we teach in our Harmon Brothers University courses is that when something is clever, people automatically, like you said, it sticks more. People think it is more credible when something's clever. When it has a nice ring to it, when it has a rhythm to it, then it resonates with people more, right? Comedy is similar in that way, in that it makes the taboo safe to talk about. So Squatty Potty, poopery. If I was to go through other examples, I would say Covenant Eyes, or some of these other things that we've done. And it makes the boring interesting. So I would say something like a mattress could be boring, but we were able to make that a little bit more interesting with purple. Or you could say that even something like ClickFunnels could maybe potentially be considered boring in some way, but it makes those things interesting. And then it also just gives you a really nice canvas to paint with, so that people stay engaged. And so that's where I think comedy lends its most value, is that you can say things you wouldn't be able to say otherwise and kind of catch people off guard when you're talking about subjects that are more of a taboo, or when you're explaining something that might be kind of dry and uninteresting, and you can kind of spice it up. And then it, like you said, it also just makes things stick more, makes things more memorable. So that's kind of how we rely on comedy. So for us, it is essential to the sale, in that it's the sugar that makes the medicine go down easier, if that makes sense.
As far as testing goes, testing the videos that you guys make, can you go into that a little bit?
The principles that we try to follow in testing are do it cheap before you do it expensive. So if you have an idea that you want to put out there, then don't go spending money on a big ad campaign hoping that it works, but test your message first, your primary message first, through things like email split testing, right? That's a way that you can do it fairly cheaply if you have any kind of an audience that follows you, or do it through things like headline and copy testing on little static ads on Facebook or on YouTube or Google or whatever, or do it through things in any way that you can do that testing earlier and for less expensive, the better off you're going to be. Let me just use some practical examples. On our campaign for Go Treads, we did a $100,000 campaign giveaway that was awarded to a company called Go Treads, and they make these cool traction devices that you slip underneath your tires when your car's stuck, and you get unstuck automatically. Like if you're stuck in the snow, sand, mud, whatever it is, slip those under and your car is going to get unstuck, guaranteed. It's just this awesome little thing that like pretty much everybody should have in the car, kind of like jumper cables. At some point, you're going to get stuck on the side of the road, and to be able to pop that in and get out is pretty awesome. But being able to test things like, how does showing a Jeep get stuck test compared to like more of a standard sedan, looking like it's stuck. And it turns out the Jeep tests way better, even if that's not the vehicle they drive. For some reason, seeing the extreme of that is like, oh, if that can get, I don't know exactly what's going on in a person's head, but we can assume that people are saying to themselves, oh, if that can get that big Jeep unstuck, or that truck unstuck, then I'm going to be much better off. And then even what performed better than that is testing it against showing a fire truck getting stuck. Like these things will literally hold up to 50,000 pound vehicles, like military grade vehicles. And that performs even better in some cases than like the Jeep does. And those are different things that we A/B test in our videos, of different cuts of the video that we show to people up front, of like these different vehicles that are stuck. And we can see kind of how long people stick around. Facebook and YouTube, they give you all that data of showing when people kind of drop off and where people are sticking around to in the video. And it's just huge. Like if we were to only ever go out on our guts, we have a success rate on our campaigns. It's something crazy where we at least get on base. Not everything's a home run, but where we're at least hitting a single, a double, a triple, maybe a home run or a grand slam kind of a thing. Where that's happening, at least getting on base, it's something crazy like 4 out of 5 times on each of our campaigns that we've done. I think it might even be higher than that. But the reason for that success is so much to do with the A/B testing, that we don't just go with our gut. We start with our gut, but then we test our assumptions, we test our audiences, we test our messaging, and all those things. And if we didn't have that testing, if we didn't have testing the way that we do, I would say Harmon Brothers wouldn't even exist right now. I'd say that first and foremost, that even if we had this many at-bats as we've had, we would have maybe 1 in 5 that would make it out, or 1 in 10 that would make it out just on our gut and just on how great we did it the first time, as opposed to the way that we've been able to test into it and been able to verify everything as we've scripted and as we've edited and as we've done all those things. So testing's huge.
Yeah, it's incredible. So nothing is left up to chance. It's all
all
dialed in, because every penny counts
whenever possible. So I mean, and I know people will say it's expensive to test, but it's expensive not to test, right, especially if you're starting out with a company getting going.
Right. So that Poop to Gold giveaway, and that's a huge giveaway, knowing how much goes into creating these these projects. What is and I'm seeing giveaways all the time from different companies, massive companies. I mean, huge giveaways. What inspired you guys to do this giveaway? And what was the main benefit that you're seeing or potentially see?
Yeah. So what inspired us to do it was actually our PR guy, Matthew Faraci. We've had a relationship with him for a long time, and he works with us on our public relations stuff when we release new campaigns and things. And he kind of gave us brought to mind this initial idea of doing some sort of a giveaway, and so much of what inspired it was when the pandemic hit. All the companies were reacting with fear. Our own clients like postponed their campaigns and like shut down, like almost everybody you can think of shut down everything that they could if there was any way at all. And we did our best to work with them and bend over backwards. It wasn't contractually allowed, but we allowed for that because we understood everyone was in a hard place and everyone was acting out of fear. And we just said to ourselves, man, this is not the way to get out of this thing, is to act with fear. You actually got to lean forward and act with more faith and more and really try new things and kind of take advantage of this opportunity to really see what the market wants, really help people out. And so we put together this $100,000 Poop to Gold giveaway of a campaign that we were going to give away for free. And we had hundreds and hundreds of companies that submitted for it, more than we ever thought would. And we ended up selecting a whole bunch of quarterfinalists and giving them kind of a Harmon Brothers university course as part of their prize. A bunch of semifinalists, giving them more Harmon Brothers university courses, some finalists that we actually did consulting with, and then the final winner, which ended up being Go Treads that we made the campaign for. And one of the biggest things that came out of this was, again, some companies will approach us and hope that Harmon Brothers is a silver bullet to overcome all their problems, right? That they're not seeing sales, and then they want us to just break through all that. And if we just do a killer campaign, then all their problems will be solved. And it's just not that way. That if you don't dig in and do the work and refine your product or your service and make it work for the customer first and foremost, then all the great marketing in the world is never going to do anything. Like your best marketing first and foremost is word of mouth, right? Is someone loving your product and telling other people that they love your product. And that's the basis for it. And if you've got that to begin with, then we're going to be in a much better place to be able to pour gas on that fire with great marketing. And so at every stage, these companies were given more tools from our playbook of how to do stuff. And there was no replacement for the companies that just dove in there and got it done, as opposed to the ones who were like, well, I applied. I didn't think I was actually going to have to really do anything at all. And they didn't really take advantage of all this value. I mean, giving them literally hundreds and thousands of dollars of value in the way of these courses and consulting and stuff. And then some of them didn't dig in and do the work, and they didn't move the needle. And then the ones that did, it was without exception that they moved the needle. In fact, Go Treads, they're up, their sales are up. They just did, in 3 days at the beginning of the launch of this campaign, they did more in sales than they had done the first 3 months of the year. But even prior to that, they had been building their sales at every stage with applying stuff that they saw from our courses, and then doing the consulting and all that stuff. They were lifting themselves up higher and higher. And then once the campaign hit, they were really, the flywheel was really going. And we saw other companies that had lifted their sales by 200x, by 300x, I think even 400x, just based on the courses and the consulting we'd given them, even without us creating a campaign for them. And so that's one of the biggest things that's come of it, is seeing these companies really succeed. And I guess it kind of goes back to our early days of that there is no marketing silver bullet for a bad product. Like, everything for us starts with a great product, a great service, something that we're passionate about. I always say nothing sells better than the truth. And when you are truthfully in love with that and you have that passion for it, it comes across in the way that you communicate it in your advertising and your marketing. And so that's what we were able to see again with this giveaway, that the people that succeeded were the ones that really they were kind of going to succeed in some way, even if it wasn't at the accelerated rate that they did. They were going to probably succeed in some way, even if we didn't get involved in the picture, right? Whether it was with that product or another one later on, they were going to find success. They were that type of people. There's no stopping them. And so to answer your other question, will there be more giveaways going forward? I guess to be determined. I think we're very much open to it and considering it a similar thing for next year with the success we saw with this campaign of what it did for the different clients, the relationships and stuff we were able to help out with. And it was very much a win-win. It was a win-win where we were able to help a ton of companies in a really bad situation in the pandemic. And it was a win for us because admittedly, other companies came to us in the process and said, hey, you helped us out in this area. Why don't you help us out in this other thing too? We'll actually pay for your services this time. Like there was some of those things admittedly that came from it as well. So yeah, it's been, we kind of figured it was a little bit of a law of the harvest kind of an approach of just like what you reap is what you sow. And we kind of made the bet on that. And it's turning out to be that way. And it's really cool to see. We just kind of had an abundance mindset with it and we feel like it paid off in a big way.
Yeah. There's a saying, the secret to living is giving. Even if you have to sometimes charge for it, if you're giving a lot of value, people will pay and they'll get a lot of value out of it. You guys, the company, yourself, your brothers are super innovative, I think, which is, why you guys were doing VidAngel, Harmon Brothers, and then Harmon Brothers University, going into original content. Can you talk about the importance of giving your knowledge away?
Yeah, I think you summed it up. The key to getting is giving, and that's kind of what we felt like about our courses is that we said, okay, if we do this, if we open up our playbook to the world, people are going to copy us. And we're like, that's okay with us because our why is to share better stories. And if we see people competing, then that'll force us to push ourselves. And it very much has, as we've seen other competition come in and we kind of welcomed it. And admittedly, sometimes you see it and you don't always welcome it on the first, the first gut reaction is to see it and be like, oh man, we could have done that better. Or wow, we gave them all the secrets for that. But at the same time, we've got the long tail view of like that pays back for us in some way. I agree with you that there's a ton of different products and services that are out there that we're seeing a failure within the education system to adjust what's happening in the market and in the economy. The incentives are, I think, misaligned within higher education. And so we're seeing the market adjust much more quickly and educate on this stuff much faster than what higher education can do. And I think it's incredibly important for people to continue their education in whatever form that is. It doesn't always have to be in the credentialed certificate kind of form. If at the end of the day it creates a new skill that you can apply to where it matters, then who cares? Where you got that education from.
Do you see any trends in advertising? Like, do you expect it to stay the same, like the successes you've had, or are you going to have to innovate and go into a different direction?
I think if you ever stand still, you're dead, right? For sure, we're going to have to innovate, and that's a big focus of ours of ways that we can innovate in advertising. You might have seen you even participated in it. I think I forget. Were you on the Hallmark ad that we did?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Right. So,
the narrative style of advertising. Yeah,
so we did kind of a narrative style ad where it was it was basically a mini Hallmark style movie that we did for Lumi deodorant. And that was experimental for us. It didn't follow our exact format of like the pitch person to camera, with the world around them and all those kinds of things. It was just more, what would a deodorant ad look like as a Hallmark movie? It was kind of where the question started, and it was really fun to do. And it's been very successful for them. I mean, it got picked up by Adweek. It has over 1 million views now. I know it was their top performing ad. At the last I had checked, and it's been very successful for them this Christmas season. And doing things like that are for sure on our radar going forward, and things that we're going to be doing. There's also nothing new under the sun, right? When you think of great storytelling within movies, They follow kind of the same formula all the time, but they do it in a fresh way. And there is truly innovative stuff that's very different, but that's not usually as mass market as what we need for an ad campaign. I mean, you could say a lot of the Marvel movies kind of repeat themselves in different ways. And I know there's been different criticism of those over time, at least from, artists, critics and things like that. But the market loves them as long as they're made well, right? And I feel like the same thing will go for our style of, a Harmon Brothers style of ad, as long as we continue to make them really well and make them fresh and innovate and do I think that will always survive. But I think we'll see other distinct formats come about in the way of something like what we did with the Hallmark Lumi ad. That will prove themselves out over time. And yeah, that'll be very much an emphasis going forward. But there's no plans to stand still. Again, that's why we give our secrets away, so it continues to push us. And we feel like when it comes to original content, storytelling and advertising makes us better original content makers, and original content and learning that skill makes us better advertisers. I feel like it goes both directions.
Do you have any advice for people, when it comes to writing or how to improve their storytelling?
Yes, 100% so. I would say, and this is the same thing I say within the Harmon Brothers University course, is that go and watch. If you want to learn really good sales writing, go and watch 100 successful Kickstarters or Indiegogos. Literally 100. I mean, you can do the math on that about how long they'll take. It'll take hours and hours, but it'll be worth it. This is a good education. And start writing down patterns. Identify how are they talking about the problem? How are they talking about the solution? What are they doing for their call to action? What things are they doing to build credibility and overcome objections? And just look for the patterns in that, and you'll start to realize, oh, this is how a nice sale flows through, right? Just that kind of hands-on experience from what's actually working. And I would do it from all different kinds of genres and different industries and things like that. So it's not all just in tech or all just in film or whatever it is. But do it from all over, but go through 100 successful ones, not ones that went bust, and look at the patterns of what's going on there. And you can learn some really great things about writing. You can do the same thing for ads that you see working on Facebook, where you can start collecting ads that you see working on Facebook and YouTube. Collect the URLs, put them in a doc, and go back and review what are some of the patterns you're seeing there. What's working? That'll help tremendously. And then I would say the same thing goes for storytelling with things like branding and original content. Is looking for the patterns there. Like a filmmaker watches a lot of films to be able to understand, okay, what's the rhythm of this thing? How does the first act go? How does the second act go? How does the third act go? Right? How do they set up this character's problem and their want, their objective, and how do they pay that off? All those things there's a lot of repetition in there, and I think you can go and look for those patterns, and that'll be really great education for you in and of itself.
Well, let's end on the Tuttle Twins. So you raised a successful fundraising round. You're doing 4 episodes right now. And what's your goals?
So the big goal is to get the show to the point that it is self-sustaining, that it makes enough money from a pay-it-forward model like what The Chosen has, where people can watch the content for free and then they can pay it forward for others to watch. The more people can watch it out there, like anybody can watch The Chosen right now for free. And then they ask you if you liked it and you'd like other people to see it, you can pay it forward to other people. But we'd like to see that model implemented along with merchandising. 70% of revenue from kid shows comes from merchandising. If you look at the box office numbers of something like Toy Story or like Cars compared to their merchandising numbers, it's a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what they've done in the way of merchandising. And is to get the show to where it funds itself season after season with the revenue coming in. So that's the objective with Tuttle Twins. Is we have now investors, about 2,500 investors that did that first investment of $1,070,000. We want to make sure that they get their investment back, and we want to make sure, but first and foremost, the show is self-sustaining. So that's the objective with that one. As far as the release dates on it go, we don't have set release dates yet because this is our first time doing animation, and we're trying to figure out exactly when that's going to land. I've been saying in the earlier half of 2021 will be the first episode, and I think we'll see a full season out by the end of 2021 or early 2022. Would be the first kind of complete season. And we're hoping that ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen episodes. And yeah, right now we're in the process of writing episodes 2 and 3. And we've got episode 4 coming up. And anyway, yeah, we're super excited about it. We feel like things are coming together, and it's a show that I'm just really excited to share with my kids, and that's what I'm going for first and foremost. I think it's something that I find funny, I find fun, and it's something I want to share with my kids, and that's my first barometer. And from there, we get feedback to adjust. Right?
Do you have anything in closing to say?
If I was to give any suggestion to someone starting out in film or in advertising, the biggest one would be the quicker that you can embrace embarrassment, the better. What I mean by that is that when you are an artist and you put your stuff out there, you're invariably going to get embarrassed at some point. You're going to make something that you end up looking back on and feeling like it's garbage. You might even make it and know instantly that it's garbage. But if you put yourself out there, you'll learn. And if you get the feedback, and if you can live with that humility of allowing other people to respond candidly to what you have and really listen and adjust, that sooner or later your skill set and your talents will increase and catch up with your tastes. You know, there's an old Ira Glass quote about how we have these really great tastes, and that's why we get into art, is because we feel like we really know how to recognize what's great, but it takes a while for our skill sets to kind of catch up to how good our tastes are, you know? And I think the fastest way to do that is embrace embarrassment. You never fail until you quit. And failure, if you can embrace that just as part of the process of progress and of growing, that's really what we're here to do. And that will accelerate you on your path so much faster than just holding everything so close and trying to get it so perfect before you put it out there. It's the people that are just kind of toss things out and just keep trying and that have more at bats that end up having more successes. So that's what I'd say. Embrace embarrassment, get to it, make something, put it out there. That's where all the action happens. That's where all the growth happens.
Daniel Harmon, thank you so much for being on here, man. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you for having me on, Sohrab.
And thank you to everybody who is listening and subscribing to Avant Savant. I am your host, Sohrab Mirmont. Please share this with your friends, family, loved ones, everybody on your list. Thank you so much. Till next time.